Inclusive education that celebrates diverse histories and cultures helps students connect with their roots. It also fosters pride in their identity and heritage. My next guest, Mary Maker, is dedicated to helping students from low-income communities gain access to prestigious universities.
I like to tell stories because stories remind me of hope.
In a TED Talk, Mary Maker shares her inspiring journey from fleeing war-torn South Sudan as a child to becoming a teacher who empowers a generation of girls often denied access to education. Mary, I watched your TED Talk yesterday, and it was incredibly compelling. How difficult is it to kind of tell your story and to capture that in such a way that you get the audience that way?
Every single time I'm stepping on that stage, I really want the audience to understand that I got out, that I got a platform to be able to tell my story, that many will never get that platform to share their story. And every single time I'm on that stage, I want people to understand that this could be you. And if something happens today, what do you take with you? How do you want people to know that story? What do you want people to get out of your story? And then that way, I hope you get to empathize and sympathize. I'm not trying to elicit any kind of empathy or trying to, or make you feel like, oh my God, I have it good. That's not the intention. The goal is for you to know that this is a story of a mother, of a father, of a soldier, of a lawyer that could happen to anybody. Yeah.
So give us a glimpse. What was that journey like and how did it begin?
I feel like the journey of Mary sometimes is muffled because I'm a child. When you're going through displacement as a child, there's just so much mixture in it. And for me, for many years, the beginning of my story felt like a fun experience. And I remember when I was speaking about the fragility, when you're in fragility or like when you're in a fragile community, you don't see the fragility until you're out. And then you're like, oh, dang, that's messed up. Right? And so for me, when I left Sudan, it was me following my mother, holding on to the hem of her dress as we moved from one village to the other, seeing how the neighbors accepted our coming, whether they saw us as a threat. Is this going to make them feel like, okay, we are welcoming neighbors, what if they bring whatever is chasing them to us, right? And for me, I will just watch my mother. If I don't see my mother panicking, then things are safe. Right? And for me, it didn't make sense. Why do we have to keep moving? Why do we have to have that mat folded every single time? And I remember we left South Sudan and went to Ethiopia into the Dima camp. And this camp was flooded with refugees. And I remember like the humanitarian action that was taking place there is trying to scramble for the numerous number of people coming in against the resources that were there. So I'm seeing my mother in this vulnerable state of, lining up with hundreds of other people to kind of like get food rations. And you get to see your parent in a different light, in a vulnerable state. And then you start to grow and you start to see how things are truly are, like how things, they fully unfold in front of your eyes. And the disparity starts to kick in and you realize you're becoming a teenager in the camp. And you realize people are getting married in the camp. And the permanence of the camp starts to kick in, that this is not a temporal space. And by then, again, you're still in a fragile community because you haven't been out. It's isolated from the rest of the country. To leave, you need a permit. You can't just walk around within Kenya. During that time, if you are found in Nairobi, the capital, you get deported back to the camp. And so like, in some way, it feels like a prison.
Mary Maker is now an education activist working with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. You talk about education. We're going to get into education quite a bit. But that education, most kids, they go out and they play, they come home, they eat dinner, they go to bed, then maybe they read a story. They're not dealing with death at a very young age. How does that shape you as a person?
it toughens you. People talk about resilient. I hate it because that means like societies have failed you, governments have failed you for you to be in that position to experience death at such a young age. It makes you strong in a bad way. In a good way that you can, like, if something horrible happens, you can withstand it. But in another way, like, you are robbed of being a child. You're robbed of your parents going to work and coming back and you going to school without fearing that this is not going to be a permanent thing. So you're robbed, yet you're resilient. And so it's this tension of like, how am I supposed to feel about this experience that I just went through? And sometimes we numb it. As kids, we numb it. Like I block so many of my childhood memories. My younger sisters sometimes remind me of things that happened. I'm like, oh, that happened. Because when it becomes too traumatic, you'd rather do something else to like make sure that you don't remember that very moment.
You know, you talked about the robbery. Part of that robbing of your childhood, though, is also, I would think, is the fear. If your friend died, are we going to make it to the camp? You know, am I going to die? Do you think about those things as a little kid? I mean, most of us can't fathom what that must be like as a child carrying that weight around with you.
I think you think about it because, number one, your parents don't even know how to talk about it. They try not to be like, okay, they went to heaven. They're no longer here. And they're like, why are there so many people going to heaven all of a sudden, right? And innocently, it will start to kick in later, especially like if it was someone so close to you, like a mother or a father, you know, and you're like, why aren't they coming back? And that feeling of being robbed starts to kick in a little bit later. In those first few months, you understand something is not right, but you can't even quite question it, and you can't quite fathom it. And then the moment it kicks in, I think that's when you feel like this huge loss. And with societies where like we don't even have spaces to talk about that, we are taught to be strong. I remember when I lost my parents later on, I couldn't cry. My community was like, you're the first child, you can't cry, you can't look weak, you have to be strong, and that's what you're going to do. So as a child, also in that very moment, like my community feels strongly about orphans, and they rub it in your face. You're an orphan, you need to be strong, there's no one there for you, so you have to stand strong for yourself. It's kind of like a way of like, okay, they're motivating you, but in a way where you're not supposed to talk about the loss that just happened. And that messes you up as you continue to grow.
But in your TED Talk, you pay tribute to your mom. You talk about your mom. You talk about women in society. And I think your message was so powerful. But can you talk about some of the messaging that you had to overcome to become the person that you are today?
I think my mom played a big role in that. My mom was like, you're a talkative child. This society is not ready for you. Right? And I just used to be a loud child. I talk too much. And I remember where she's like, Mary, probably you need to talk quietly, or like walk like a girl, you know, don't look people straight in the eye, you know, kind of a thing. There's just like so many things that you're trained as a girl and groomed to be. Number one, so that you get a suitable husband, right? From a young age, like even when we're playing house in the perspective of like, oh, you're going to get married to so and then you'll have children, and then you cook. That's what you do as a woman. But my mother was an artist. So she did most of the community events, like in Kakuma, like any marriage ceremony, you just see her hululating, you know, like in her top or like the traditional dresses. And I would just follow her. And I saw she was unafraid, especially when she was performing. She was all of a sudden this new person that had a voice. Even if in reality, she constantly was reminded by the other women or like the men around that, when are you going to give birth to a boy? Now, it was me, my sister that follows me, my sister Elizabeth, and then my sister Monica, and then my sister Dorcas. And I'm like, you should give up at this point. I think it's going to be a women's house, you know? And I think for her, she really emphasized the power of voice. And she's like, Mary, for this community to understand the gravity of women struggling, you might have to use art to do it, right? And in those moments, in those instances, I was like, but you are a soldier in the war. The women in the war are the ones that are cooking for the soldiers. The women are the ones raising the kids. When women are fleeing, they're the ones actually fleeing with the next generation to the camps. They're holding the communities. And I'm like, I wish you all knew this power. And the power of women coming together, it's like a coven. I shouldn't use the coven of witches, probably not. But it's like a coven of women coming together to weave, and make beadings, like whatever I'm wearing in my hand, like to bead together. And they share stories and they remember home. And I loved that role that they played.
In 2021, Mary Maker founded the nonprofit organization Elimisha Kakama, a Swahili phrase meaning educate Kakama. The organization helps low-income students gain admission to universities in the United States. You have such a powerful message when you go out and speak. I know people have to come up to you afterwards. What's your message to them?
I think my big message to them is to do three things for me, right? Number one, refer us to people that know the work that we're doing in education. For instance, Elimisha Kakuma, who do you know that is a connector that could connect us to funding or to influence or to universities and host families and communities where our students could actually thrive? For the period poverty or like the period monologues, the company that I'm working for, what menstrual equity organizations do you know that we could benefit from? This work is really big, but we can't do it alone. We do it with the help of so many other people, and funding is one big of it. Influence is a big part of it, and then reference is a humongous part of it. So I think that's my call to action every single time. Three things: influence, connection, and monetary help. I don't know. Yeah.
Let me finish by asking about the pain that you must carry for your homeland. The fighting continues, and it doesn't seem to get as much attention as other conflicts around the world. Give me your thoughts.
I think that's where like my heart really kind of like blurs out, because there's so many stories that so many people don't know about. People not knowing about it doesn't mean that it is not happening. The suffering is still continuing. People are struggling. And to be able to shed that light to this story is really important. I talked about exceptionality. My story tends to be exceptional, but the reality is it's not. It's the story of so many other displaced people all over the world. And I wish people could take some moment to really learn about other countries and what's happening in those countries and why is this conflict happening. That way the world can start to move towards like sustainability, can start to move towards building world peace. And my heart aches for my country, and I hope people get to know that. And these stories are not shared. I want people to really push themselves to learn about these stories.
My life story, my history is a glimpse of so many other refugee stories out there.
Mary Maker was honored along with other co-founders of Elimisha Kakama with the Social Advocacy Award at the annual We Rise Together celebration. The organizers recognized their impactful work in supporting students. When you found your voice, it was a voice in benefit of education. What did education do for you? How did it turn the corner for you?
Oh, I feel like it brought me to life. In school, I was the most happiest. In school, I disrupted systems. In school, I could say what was in my mind without being like, shh, you don't have to say it that loud. I became a critical thinker, right? I challenged things. I wrote more plays about many things that I didn't like in the community. And most of the time, later on, I went to a boarding school. And in Kenyan boarding schools, we usually have visiting days where the parents come and then the students are supposed to make a skit or something like that. I made so many skits to call out on a few things that I didn't like, right? To call out on my stepmother being mean to us, or child abuse that was happening at home. I would put it in there and I would use the religion. I'm like, utilize all the tools that they use within the community to actually call out. Not call out, I hate using the word call out, to call people in and actually have a conversation, right? And for me, I think that was the key thing, right? Education helped me to become the best person because my teachers encouraged it. They were like, oh, Mary, are you going to make a skit for Sunday this week? I'm like, You got it. And I'll sit down. I'm like, And I'm saying like skits because theater is not, I don't want to say it's not recognized. It's not as much advanced as it is in the West. In Africa, it's a way of life, right? And so you going to school to study, it doesn't make sense to so many people in the community. It's like, so you went to America to become an entertainer? Is that what you went to do? You should become a doctor or something like that. I'm like, well, I don't think those patients are going to appreciate me being being their doctor. But okay, that aside, I feel like education made me come to life and really be able to call in community so that we can have discussions about things that really matter, not the girls getting married. Let's talk about period poverty. Let's talk about this thing called the refugee camp. Why are we still here? We need to be in communities. We need to self-actualize. Like, if you know, the whole Maslow hierarchy of need, we also as refugees need to make it to that top pyramid so that we can contribute to communities. Those are the conversations that really mattered to me. For us to advance our community, for us to build our country some days, because we don't want to be refugees forever. We don't want to be migrants forever. We don't want to feel othered. We want to feel like we belong. We want to feel like we can be in search of home.
As an activist, and there's so many layers to this that you've talked about, refugee camps that never go away, period poverty, and we've only talked about a couple of elements. And and as you mentioned, the stories aren't out there. You get up each morning, it's a big, giant problem, but you've got to attack pieces at a time. How do you approach it?
If I start with education, I think when I got a scholarship to come to the United States, I didn't want it to end with me. I'm like, okay, there's all these big problems, but what can I do as Mary, right? And the resources that I have. And how I attack it, I start from the grassroots of what I know. I know the camp inside out. This is where I've grown up. And so when I got to St. Olaf in Minnesota, me and my 3 friends were like, okay, let's come together. We need to start a similar program that brought us here within the camp, right? And we started this nonprofit in 2021, just like piloting, bringing 5 students. We wanted 5 students, 100 applied. We ended up taking 12 students. We bring them to a center and we train them on how to access the Common App, right? We go to universities and talk to universities like, have you ever thought about refugee students applying to your school? Have you ever thought about Kakuma refugee camp? Do you know where it is, right? And we kind of like do this, kind of like laying the foundation and introducing our students to universities for students to also know that universities exist, that they are also part of the competitive pool that is applying for universities abroad. Right now, we've placed more than 35 students on full ride. I'm talking full financial aid, right? That's more than 6.5 million worth of scholarships for the 4 years that we've been in operations. And for me, that's how you start to tackle these big issues. We might be a small nonprofit and a small organization, but the kind of help and opportunities that we've been able to up into our community is big. Now, something interesting about that is the ripple effect that gets to happen with that.
I got 2 more things I want to ask you about. One is we're getting a lot of what's up here. We're also getting a lot of what's here, right? But we're not getting what's in there. And you write. Would you mind sharing one of your monologues?
Yes, I could share one of the monologues. I wrote this one. It's called Untamed. I've been reading that book, Untamed, by, what's her name? Glenn Boyle, I think. I don't know if that's the right name, but yes, she's an amazing writer. And she talks about this idea of like feeling caged, and you can't cage something that is wild, right? And I think that's how I feel most of the time. I want to be untamed because I have so much to offer the world, and you can't put Mary in a box, and you can't put so many other people in a box. You have to open up the spaces for them to thrive. So this is called A Song Untamed. If my motherland could sing, she would sing through me. Her voice unaccented on my tongue, needing no translation. When I close my eyes, I hear something different than you. Whispers fill my lungs, a quiet echo without harmony. That's where her melody meets mine, in the stillness that is not silence. My motherland is no respecter of persons. So her song respects no borders. She can sip through the cracks in the refugee camp walls or track me down in Harlem as she did in Nairobi. Her song can noise cancel the sirens seducing my people to the sea and the propaganda seeking to erase our souls. She can be the voice that lulls me to sleep and the soundtrack in my dream. She may keep me awake with her worries because her worries are mine too. But at dawn, she invites the sun onto my skin with a lullaby, reveling with me in my African blackness, this Sudanese blackness, rejoicing in every tangle and coil at my hair, a mirror revealing to me my beauty. My motherland gave birth to itself. So her song is a song I have to write myself. The story I've lived, the longing I've felt, and the echoes I will leave behind. I will not sing a quiet lament, but will be a fast unfurled in a power chord, blaring out a song untamed. I love poetry. There's something about it that is so cool.
That's so nice. One final question. You are young. You are celebrating your youth. But at some point, we all, turn the page, we retire, we walk off into the sunset. When you do, how would you like people to remember you? Mary was, how would you answer that?
Mary was untamed. Mary spoke her mind. Mary changed something within her community. Mary didn't just leave behind a legacy, but left behind a generation that could stand up for themselves, a generation that could tell their own stories, a generation that could disrupt systems and actually create new systems for themselves. I think that's the legacy I want to leave behind. They have to probably change the ideas I had and make them their own, right? I think that's what really pushes me, and that's what I want to be remembered for. And even if I don't get remembered, I hope I would have started something. I would have created a shift that will disrupt systems. I think that's how I see it.
The fire's definitely burning. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.